Coming up on today's Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, Trent and Biz take a look at the window of opportunity. Has it closed for Iowa? Stat Boy goes to work. He's got some information about just how historically inept this Iowa offense is. We'll do that, and we'll make our picks for the week presented by BetOnline. All coming up on today's Locked On Hawkeyes podcast.
Our Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon. That's my buddy Biz. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast for Thursday, October 13th. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Biz, here we are at the bye week. 3-3 on the season. A 9-6 loss to an Illinois team that I guess has some positive momentum, but another game that was there for the taking. Frustrations abound. We heard as we sit here on a Wednesday, Brian Ferentz was talking to the media earlier today in Iowa City, and well, not a whole lot of changes appear to be on the horizon for this Hawkeye offense. Frustration, certainly one of the more frustrating years we can remember in a long time.
Yeah, I think Brian just got off the podium, and he did not walk up there and just announce he was quitting and storm off. So we're stuck with him for another 6 weeks at least, Trent. So, as you know, I was in Boise, Idaho for a wedding this last weekend, and I had every opportunity to just avoid watching the game. But the thing about Iowa football is that they're so bad offensively right now. It's kind of like going by a bad car accident, right? You just can't take your eyes off it. I kept getting sucked back in, and unfortunately watched way more of it than I probably should have, because it's one of those things you knew it was going to happen. You just can't take your eyes off it. But to me, the bigger frustration wasn't what happened on the field on Saturday. It was the comments that were made by Brian Ferentz afterwards. I mean, to me, that was where the program the jump the shark basically on Saturday night, because it went from straight stubbornness to just pure arrogance on Saturday night. I just his post-game comments reminding the media that they won 10 games last year just were incredibly arrogant and condescending, and it's just I don't know. I feel like we're in the movie Groundhog's Day, Trent. It's the same thing every week, but it went from stubbornness to arrogance, and that's when it becomes a major problem.
And the digging down, we had fun with Kirk as he's gotten older and leading the timeouts in Minnesota, and all those things are all well and good when you're winning football games. But when things start to go south, and they're certainly heading that direction right now, those things that were kind of cute and fun and fun things to talk about, it quickly goes the other way. And you mentioned the arrogance about that. We won 10 games last year. I'm surprised you didn't know that. And just the tone that he used. The question, what coach was it that got the personal foul call against them, the unsportsmanlike conduct? It was Brian, but he won't even say it. He won't even say his name. And those are the things that make this nepotism angle look even worse, when he won't even say it was him. It's a simple response, right? Luke Lachey, he got the unsportsmanlike. They said his number, and we all knew who it was. But for Kirk to not even answer the question, he was 2 different times he was asked, was it on Brian? Was it somebody else? He said, well, you guys saw. He won't even say his name. That struck me as somebody that is, again, feeling out of touch. He's feeling old. He's feeling suddenly, they won 10 games last year. I get that. You're also blowing out in 3 of them. And the other one you let slip away against Kentucky, a game that absolutely should have won. You were blown out by Purdue, Wisconsin, and Michigan in 3 losses in conference play. Just not being able to see the forest through the trees. They said they were going to double down on themselves this year. That thing has not worked out. That has come up craps from this season.
Well, and Trent, we talked about it after the South Dakota State game. People, the nation laughed at us then, but I mean, it's gone beyond laughs now. I mean, we are a full-on national joke at this point. I don't know if you watch the College Football Inquirer or listen to the College Football Inquirer podcast, but it's got 3 of the big national names, Wetzel and Ford and the guy from Sports Illustrated. this week, you have one of the bigger games of the year. Alabama holds off Texas A&M at literally the last play of the game, and that wasn't even their lead story. Instead, the lead story was 8 minutes of Iowa football, laughing about how ridiculous we are and talking about the absurd, whatever it was, 15-play minus 15-yard field goal drive we had with the 2 punts or 2 turnovers combined in there, and then just talking about the arrogance and the nepotism that we're talking about right now. I mean, it's pretty incredible how the nation looks at us right now, and they're right to. I mean, there's no points to argue back on the other side. There's just no. I mean, we talked about it before. There's no. Rarely in the world right now do you get 100% of the people agreeing on something, but right now there's not a single person that you can't justify what's going on with this program in any way right now.
So this comes from our buddy Schitz, who's right now was listening to the podcast. And Brian, when talked about Padilla coming in there, Spencer Petras has been the quarterback for every single snap this year, which in its own right is ridiculous. But we talked about that plenty. But talking about Padilla, his mobility, if that is something that could help a struggling offensive line. And to paraphrase, when we scramble, it turns into backyard football, which our offense isn't built for and can't handle. You put an offensive system in place that can't handle a mobile quarterback in 2022? Well, that's a fireable offense right there. We know that's not going to happen, but come on. Blood pressure rising here, Biz.
Yeah, Trent, best just stay off the internet for the next 30 minutes. Focus here. Focus.
I know. I just can't. I'm left scratching my head so many times. I got this question. I did a mailbag podcast for yesterday's podcast, and somebody said, if Padilla was a quarterback, if he was the starter starting in August, he got all the reps, what would Iowa's record be right now? I think they're 5-1. I think they're 5-1 if Alex Padilla. I don't think Alex Padilla is great. That's not what this is. Spencer Petras is just so bad, and a guy that can move around just a little bit. Am I crazy here? Do you think Iowa's 5-1 if Padilla was the starter?
Well, I have no clue. I mean, I have no clue with the quarterback, but I will say this, Trent, because I saw someone else posted this. We're 2 very debatable replay decisions away from being 5-1 anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the potty bomb fumble at the goal line was very debatable, and then the fumble on Saturday night with the scoop and score was very debatable as well. Those 2 decisions, replay decisions go our way, we're still probably 5-1. So whether it's Padilla, Petras, I mean, I don't know. I'm tired of talking about Spencer Petras because I think honestly he's played capable football the last month. And I'm tired of talking about him. And he's the low-hanging fruit because he's the quarterback, but it's the offensive line. They're so bad. This is, I mean, we've talked about it over and over and over. We don't need to talk about it again, but they're junior college level bad right now. I mean, they can't pick up stunts. They can't pick up, anybody blitzes. I mean, teams don't have to even blitz. All they have to do is just send 4 from different locations, and somebody's going to get home every single time. And when that happens, you're so limited in what you can do. You can't throw deep because we don't have time to do it. We can't run the ball. We can't you can't run screens because they're getting home with 4, which means there's 7 guys sitting back and waiting. I mean, you can only beat screens if people are blitzing on you. People aren't even blitzing, really honest. They're just sending 4 in different ways. And so, I mean, we could talk about it all day, Trent, but let's move on from the debacle of Saturday and talk a little bit about bigger picture things.
Mm-hmm. Big picture, the window of opportunity and what has been there. And this is something that has continued to come into my conversations here over the last couple of weeks is this Iowa football program that has had a big chance. Yep, got to the championship game last year and the loss to Michigan aside. Getting there, it was a great moment. But we've had this conversation a lot, and I know we're not alone, where Iowa football should have been better. As good as it's been over the last 5 years, and the wins and the way they stack up against not just your Big Ten brethren, but across the country, it has been very successful, yet it feels like it should have been better, coupled with that window's now closing. And when these opportunities come around, you got to take advantage, and it feels like Iowa didn't take advantage of this window that's been there the last 5 years with this elite level defense.
Well, let's talk about the window a little, Trent, because I mean, if you look back, I mean, it really has been an extended stretch of really good football for the University of Iowa, and I don't want to forget that because it's been 7+ years. You go back to since 2015, we've been in the hunt and had at least hope for a Big Ten West championship every single year. 7 straight years. I mean, you look back to the last 7 years, we've been first, second, third, second, and first in the Big Ten West. Part of that is the Big Ten West is not the greatest division in the world, but that part is that we've had good football teams. That's 7 straight years in the top half of your division, which that's not easy to do. I mean, you look back at prior years of Iowa football, we've had windows of 3-4 years, from 2008 to 2010, there was a 3-year window. From 2002 to 2005, there was a big 4-year window there where we had great success. But I mean, you got to go back to the early 80s, 80s to find a stretch where 7 straight years of top half Big Ten results for 6-7 years in a row. And so, I mean, the fact of the matter is, like you said, could we have had more than 2 division titles? Yeah, probably. I mean, do we miss out on some opportunities? Absolutely. But we've had, what it comes down to, Trent, is hope. We've had hope every single year for 7 straight years. Every year there's been hope that, we've got a chance. And right now it certainly feels pretty darn hopeless. And, that hope is not there right now. And to be honest with you, with no more divisions probably starting next year, the road to getting championships is going to get a whole lot harder. And so it's hard right now to see where that hope's going to come the next couple of years, because it's right now things look pretty hopeless. I mean, that window of opportunity certainly seems to have closed, and I'm not sure how quickly it's going to open again.
And that's where I am too. And it's very frustrating to understand what you have and what the future holds for this offense. If they stay status quo, or if the changes are just, a few cosmetic things, but ultimately it's going to be the same kind of system, the same kind of things. Can you evolve and change and win at this level the way that they're recruiting? How much is quarterback and wide receiver recruiting going to start to dry up? If they go to the transfer portal after this year, who's going to want to come play in this antiquated system? So you get into all those different things, and it gets very scary, Biz.
Yeah. Speaking of the transfer portal, how in the world did we not go find an offensive lineman or 2 in the transfer portal? I mean, we talk about quarterback, which I get why we didn't bring in a quarterback, because I can't imagine there's a bunch of quarterbacks knocking on our door waiting to come here. But you'd think we'd be an absolute dream for an established mid-major lineman who's played 3 or 4 years to come in here as a senior and put some tape at Iowa football. I mean,
yeah,
we just obviously horribly misjudged what we had coming back for offensive linemen.
Yeah. And, George Barnett, he's the second-year offensive line coach. I think there's got to be certainly some fingers pointed his way. This has not developed. The recruiting misses of 2018 and 2019 were basically you brought in, I think, 6 different guys, and none of them are seeing any kind of moments. I mean, those are supposed to be your upperclassmen. Those are supposed to be your building blocks. The only guy still around is a walk-on, Nick DeYoung, and he was out last week with an injury, but still a walk-on, and that's all you're hoping for in 2 classes. Iowa can't afford that. Now, the Jeff Jenkins, the Cody Inces, those injuries have derived them. Tyler Endress, it never worked for him. You just go through in that recruiting. It's been very, very poor, and it leads to where you are on Saturday, where you're starting 4 underclassmen, 4 sophomores, and outside of that group, not a butt kicker. Richmond, we thought he was turning the corner. That wasn't the case. Ellsbury, as he's gotten more snaps, he has not been the elixir that we were hoping for. It's just bad. It's bad up front. Wide receiver group's not good. Quarterback play's not good. I think the running backs are talented, but you just really can't see with what they're playing with right now. But Brian, he's not resigning. He couldn't look his kids in the eye, so we got him for at minimum 6 more weeks, and it's going to be longer than that, right? I don't anticipate a change this offseason. Am I
Really?
just too right now?
No, I think you talked about how close we were. We talked about how close we were to 5-1. The silver lining to me, Trent, of us not being 5-1 is I think there's changes coming. I've talked about it before. I think you're going to see a mutual agreement where Brian Ferentz goes and finds a job in the NFL, and they try to spin it as a new position for him. So there's no way he's coming back next year. I can't fathom it. Maybe that's just me being foolish and ignorant about the situation, but I feel like we've officially hit the point where there's no coming back from this right now. I guess miraculously, maybe if we lose to Ohio State and then somehow miraculously win the next 5, I guess that could change things, but it's not happening. We'll talk about how historically bad the offense is, and you'll realize, Trent, things are going to get worse the next 6 weeks, not better.
Okay. Well, here we go. We're going to talk about that as we continue. Stat Boy, he has gone to work. We'll put Stat Boy in charge of putting together a look back and how historically inept this Iowa offense is. That's as we continue here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. BetOnline, your number one source for football betting information this season. You can find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check on your favorite games and events, including Major League Baseball. The playoffs are here. MMA, boxing, golf, NBA, NHL, they're getting started all at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is where you can go online or just jump on your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Biz, we will make our BetOnline picks coming up here a little bit later in the show. But before that, let's talk about this offense and the numbers that are damning. I've seen a few things out there online, just how ugly it has been this season. But I know Stat Boy went to work, and as always, he came up with a treasure trove of information.
Yeah, during the bye weeks, Trent, I like to put Stat Boy to work because we got nothing else to talk about. And so most of what I've seen online, and I assume you've seen as well, is just talking about this year's offense. But I always like to put it in historical context. And when you're talking history, you got to turn to Stat Boy. And so he found some numbers, Trent, that confirm that not only has this been a bad offense, but it is a historically, unbelievably bad offense. You ready to dig into the numbers?
All right, let's go into it. This is not going to be fun, but yeah, let's hear it.
It actually is kind of fun. You're going to hear some names and some teams here that are just going to make you chuckle because it's all you can do at this point is laugh. I mean, and it's the names and info is pretty alarming. So, all right, Trent, quick question for you. You probably know it, but how many yards per game are we averaging this year?
Is it 230, something like that?
238, 238.7 to be exact. We're midway through the year. We've got still some very good defenses to go against. You got Ohio State, Minnesota, Purdue's even a pretty good defense. Wisconsin's always a very good defense. So it's not unfathomable to think that we may end the year with 238 yards per game. So the question for Statboy was very simple. Since 2000, in the past 23 years now, how many teams have averaged less than 238.7 yards per game for an entire year? And you ready for the pretty alarming info?
0.
No, it's happened. It happens occasionally, but it's who it happens to that's alarming. So it's happened 14 times in the last 22 years. This is the legendary group that it's happened to, Trent. It's happened to New Mexico, UMass, UTEP, Wake Forest, Miami of Ohio, Florida International, New Mexico State, Central Florida, Florida International a second time, North Texas, Stanford, Temple, and Rutgers.
Who's who of college football?
Yeah, those are the who's who of college football. But this is where it gets fun. Kind of a top 5 of amazing info of those 14 teams. The total record of those 14 teams that average 238 yards or less, 22 and 137. If you do the math, that's average about 1.5 wins per year and average about 9.8 losses per year. So the fact that we're 3-3 is an absolute miracle.
Not trending in a positive direction for the back half of the year.
Nope. So looking at it even closer, only one team of those 14 has ever, in the entire group, won more than our current 3 wins. That was George O'Leary's Central Florida Knights back in 2008. They somehow found a way to get to 4-8. So again, if the numbers keep trending the way they are, it ain't gonna. We keep fooling ourselves that maybe we can somehow get to a bowl game or get to 7 wins or something like that. But 4-8 is the gold standard for the yards that we're looking at right now. So even more amazing when you dig into it more. even deeper, only 4 of those 14 teams won more than one game that year. So you're talking 10 of the 14 won either 1 or went over. 4 of the 14 are overs. So last only 2 of the 22 teams were Power 5 schools. You're looking at 2006 Stanford and 2014 Wake Forest. Those are the only 2 times that a Power 5 school has averaged less yards than we have. So pretty amazing. But then this is the real kicker, Trent. I had Stat Boy dig into the 14 different coaches that were involved to find out basically what happened to those 14 coaches after these historically awful offensive seasons. So when you dig into it, here's the info. Here's the 14 coaches. 4 of them were in their first season. So justifiable that,
Yep.
Cupboard's bare. You gotta take your lumps. 4 of them, including Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. He obviously has done quite well. But 4 in their first season. 2 of them were in their second season and survived after that second season, didn't get fired. But then you've got 2 of them that were fired mid-season, 5 of them that were fired at the end of the season. So there's half of them. Only 1 of the 14 was actually an established coach who survived after the year. And that was, again, good old George O'Leary, who's most famous for what, Trent?
O'Leary, well, lying, right, about his resume?
Lying, yeah. He was the coach of Notre Dame for 3 days before they found out that he blatantly lied on his resume. So the other 13 coaches were either just starting off or got canned. So, that leads me to believe, I think we all agree, Kirk's not leaving. So somebody's got to leave. The status quo isn't going to stay there. So that's why I'm of the belief that Brian's gone at the end of this year, but maybe not. So there's your historical breakdown. And to tie a bow on it, Trent, let's talk about the Iowa breakdown. Stat Boy looked. You want to guess what the lowest yards per game was ever in the Hayden and Kirk era? So we're talking about 45 years. What's the lowest yards per game annually that we've ever had?
Well, I would guess it would maybe be something either early on in Hayden or early on in Kirk. 2004, no, they couldn't run the football. I would just be taking a guess, though. What do you got?
Early Kirk, first year we averaged 266. That's the lowest ever. Only twice in the entire Hayden and Kirk era have we averaged less than 300 yards per game. So we're going to have to average 360 or something in the last 6 games to avoid the dreaded under 300 mark. But this is the funny thing. My dad talks all the time about how god awful Iowa football was before Hayden. So the numbers back that up. In the 70s, from 1970 to 1978, we never averaged more than 288 yards a game. In 5 of those seasons, they averaged less than 250. So it puts into perspective just how awful Iowa football was. But we've got a chance to beat all those teams if we keep it up. So historically bad offense.
What a world. What a world. Anything else for Stat Boy?
No, that's it. That's the breakdown. So we're in some fine company with the New Mexico States, and the Florida Internationals of the world right now.
Oh, just wonderful. Just wonderful. We'll try to turn it around here a little bit. We got our picks coming up here. Also a basketball question for you, Biz, as Big Ten Basketball Media Day was yesterday. I want to get a quick thought on you on that. That's as we continue here. This is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. All right, Biz, back with you one final time as we talk Iowa football with you on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Also a little basketball. We'll make our picks for the week presented by BetOnline, but great hearing from the crew. Brad Underwood, I don't know if you saw it, but he mentioned, hey, somebody asked him if he had a street fight, who'd show up with you. And he said, I'd take Connor McCaffrey, which was cool to see. We, of course, saw Connor nose to nose with one of his players a couple of years back with the Illini, but I'm excited about this basketball team. I don't think they're going to be great. They'll be entertaining once again. And I think they're a tournament team again at very minimum.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Trent. Entertaining. They're going to be an entertaining team. And, 2 teams were at Media Day yesterday. You got the men and the women both. And the women are going to be unbelievably entertaining this year. And so that, to me, right now is the most important thing, because football has been such a – whatever the exact opposite of entertaining is So I'm just looking forward to actually having some excitement and enjoying some fun basketball. Are they going to be, a perfect team? Are they going to win the Big Ten like they somehow did last year? Probably not. But they are going to be entertaining. They're going to be able to put, 4, 6, 8 guys with length out there at the same time and create some matchup problems. And so, yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm excited. I think they're a fun group. I think it's a group that can win their share of games and be a fun team to cheer for the next 3-4 months, because God knows the Iowa fan base needs some fun right now.
And then we can go from complaining about the offense to complaining about the defense, and we'll just flip-flop roles.
I'm going to say it right now, I'm not going to complain.
That sounds.
We know it's coming. We know the defense is going to be shaky, unless it's as long as it's serviceable. I won't complain.
Well, the saving grace for me is I have been terrible betting college football this year, has been Iowa unders, live betting Iowa unders, and made a pile of bets during the course of the Iowa-Illinois game on Saturday. So I will not be able to get right with my terrible bets that I make throughout the course of the week, but I got you last week. Last picks, I actually was on the winning side of things. No Iowa game to bet on this week, but we have Alabama, Tennessee, our best bet of the week. Let's start right there. Alabama, Tennessee. I still feel we just have to know what's going to happen, obviously, at the quarterback spot for Alabama. It's very difficult to make a handicap in this football game. And in the back of the mind, I loved what Tennessee did last week. I was all over LSU a week ago. I thought it was a huge look-ahead spot for Tennessee. They came out there right away and just absolutely demolished LSU and did it on the road. Very impressive effort there. But I continue to cling with these memories of the new kid on the block, the young team coming up to get Saban, whatever it is, and Saban in Alabama time after time after time, just putting their face into it. I'm going to go the same direction this week. I'm going to lay it with Alabama, though. I still obviously have to wait for Bryce Young and see what his determination is going to be for the point spread when I actually put a bet in.
Yeah, honestly, my thought process is about the exact same as yours. The thing to me is Alabama rarely, if ever, puts together two shaky efforts in a row. I think sometimes Saban loves when they either stumble or almost stumble, because he can, as he calls it, the rat poison. So I think you're going to see Alabama's best effort this week. And I think it's down to 7, or I even saw 6.5 in places, because it's because of the unknown with Young. So give me Alabama, but again, I wouldn't touch the spread one way or the other, just until you know what's going on with Bryce Young.
Yeah, makes a whole lot of sense. Best bet of the week last week, I hit with Texas A&M getting that cover against Alabama. You went with the Cornhuskers, and you did not get a win there, as they won it by 2, and you were laying 3. That's a tough one to swallow, though. They easily could have been down like 21-0 at the half in that football game too, against Rutgers. Oh boy, Black Friday.
Yeah, that was some bad. I watched the vast majority of that game while sitting in an outdoor bar in Boise, and that was some bad football. Wow, that's somebody had to win, and unfortunately Nebraska did.
What is your bet of the week? What's your best bet that you're looking at right now?
I'm doubling down, Trent. Utah was I picked Utah last week in our game of the week, and it failed on me. But give me Utah again this week. I kind of the same thing I talked about with Bama. Kyle Whittingham's teams rarely, if ever, play poorly 2 weeks in a row, and I think they're going to come out and stomp USC. I think USC has been very lucky in a variety of different ways. I think Caleb Williams is due to make some mistakes, and I think this is one where Utah wins by double digits.
I buy that. In fact, that's going to be a family play, because I'm going to jump aboard with you on that one. And we're going to be in the same game, but not for our purposes here. My BetOnline best bet of the week, it is Iowa State. They're getting 17. They haven't been blown out in a Big 12 game in 6 years. Texas is better. Iowa State, they have their own issues offensively, but I just don't see the Longhorns blowing them out in this game. I think it's going to be ugly. They'll win by 7-10, something like that, but ultimately getting 17, that is just too much. Give me Iowa State for my best bet of the week. I know you love that.
Yeah, I always, honestly, I've over the years, I've bet quite often on Iowa State, but I don't know what to think of them right now. This feels like kind of a make or break game for them. Either they hang in for 4 quarters and fight, and they're the most together team of all time, or things implode for them this week. the thing I noticed with them, Hunter Deckers has gotten worse every single week, and that's the thing that would scare me, and that's why I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm not sure I'd be real confident putting money on the Clones right now either.
Let's wrap things up here as we finish up, and it is time once again for another Biz's Beat.
Well, Trent, Biz's Beat goes back to baseball because, as you know, the playoffs started this week, and my Mets, in classic Mets fashion, didn't even make it to the real start of the playoffs. They got knocked out by the mighty San Diego Padres. So, as a Mets fan, I should get used to it, just like as an Iowa fan, you should get used to historically bad offenses. As a Mets fan, I should get used to being disappointed. But it sucks because rarely do you get a 100-win season out of a Mets or a Twins team, and then they end with a whimper. So an all-around truly awful sports weekend for my team. So it can only go up from here.
Well, look at that positivity. That's how we're going to end things here today. We'll be back next week with more with Biz, as we'll talk more basketball next week with the bye week and figure out, is there a way for Iowa to beat Ohio State? I think we know the answer to that one. Thanks a lot, Biz. We'll talk again next week.
All right. Go Hawks.